Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an ostracizing episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. And here's your host, Alan Mosley.
Why are we ostracizing?
We're ostracizing ourselves.
Our niche audience is already only like 0.3% of the population.
That's right. Then we should just all get together and have
So
a party.
we're ostracized.
We're ostracized,
yes.
right.
So we're not ostracized. We're being ostracized.
Yes.
This is an ostracized episode.
Ostracized episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's ostracized. Fine.
I mean,
Very good.
I've done some ostracizing in my day, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't know.
You are ostracized.
Yeah, I've been ostracized. Yeah, and really, that's the way we like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That means we have a small little special club, and that's all that matters.
Sure.
Welcome to the special club.
Sure, why not? Whatever you got to say to go to sleep at night, that's fine. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of The Gold Standard. I am your host, Alan Mosley. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. It's right there. Look, there it is on the screen.
Check it out.
You can follow me on Twitter, which is @AlanMMosley, but you don't have to do any of that. You can just go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com.
That's right.
Oh,
What?
I need to pull up our website. You know
Pull
why?
up the website. Why?
Hold on, let me pull it up first.
Pull it up.
Because I actually updated it.
You updated it.
I actually updated our because last week I think I might have mentioned our website and then I pulled it up and it was really old. so look at that. Check this out. So when you look at our website, you actually see the most recent episode of the Gold Standard on the website. So there's the episode we had with Lou, which he was looking really good.
Yeah,
look at that.
Good.
That's
Yeah.
really good feed right there. And also, not only is it the most updated episode, I also have my most recent article published in the article section.
Yeah, congratulations, man. It's a great article.
Yeah. And you know what? I had actually thanked Lou Rockwell for having my last article on LRC, on LouRockwell.com.
Good.
Because of that, it got picked up by Zero Hedge, a bunch of other places.
Nice.
It's really awesome.
That's
he
great.
said, you know what, send me some more.
Okay.
And so I did. And wouldn't you know, look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
LouRockwell.com, The Real Tragedy of the Tragic War Hero.
Awesome.
By Alan Mosley. We'll talk about that another day, because that is a good one. But there you have it. So
Yes.
I'm a man of my word, and so is he. So there you go. Yeah, so we have a really cool show today. We're working out some new tech.
Yep.
Using some new software.
Some new toys. That's right.
Using a new little microphone thing.
Yeah, you got yourself a little little microphone on your tie there.
Well, so look at this. So now, because before I had to talk into the microphone.
That's right.
And when I would nod off mid-episode,
like, I'm gone. I'm way over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Distance,
and so now I can just.
You can lean back and well, don't go too far because now you're just looking like.
But you can still hear me.
Yeah.
Clearly. You can still hear me clearly. That's the because you gotta get comfortable.
Yeah.
You gotta settle in for some gold standard.
Yeah, it's like when you watch those late night shows, the microphone that's on the desk right there and all that. Those are most of the time they're just not even plugged up.
Yeah.
So I've got an issue. See, I've got to make sure that it's plugged up. Now it's working and I can turn it on right here, but you're never gonna see me put that mic on there without it being. Oh, flick it. Oh, look at that. Hear that? Yeah, that's right. See, it does work. No cheating.
It is working.
No cheating.
Okay.
They don't plug theirs in, and they think I don't catch that.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So we had a pretty tame meme of the week last week.
Yeah, we did.
Because I wanted to have something that wasn't too uncouth for Lou Rockwell to be on the show. Look, I like as spicy of a meme as I can get. If you're going to have a meme, it should be spicy.
That's right.
But out of respect for a distinguished guest, I wouldn't have on something really
crass.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But not this week.
Yeah.
Because this week we have on Mike Maharrey. He doesn't care. So this right here is a spicy meme, my friends.
All right.
When your dad's a magician and disappears for 3 years, then reappears as a flag.
Oh, wrong button.
Yeah, there's Blake.
There
there's
it is.
me. And it just says dope.
Oh.
Now, so for people who are not watching at home, they're just listening to the podcast.
Yeah,
It's a picture. It's the picture of the soldier handing the folded flag to the crying little boy because I guess his dad died or whatever. I mean, or his mom.
Could be his mom.
Moms can die
not
too.
Getting out of shape. Yep.
Yeah. That's a pretty spicy meme.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
No, that's intense.
And it's ironic that is our meme of the week today because did you know that today is the 16th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
16 years.
That's crazy.
Ago today, and we're still there.
Gosh, life's short.
Life's really short if you're an innocent Iraqi underneath the drone strike.
That's
then it's really
really
short.
short.
Wow, this got dark all of a sudden.
It's dark.
Dark all of a sudden.
How come it's every time you're talking with me, it just gets
I don't
dark?
know. Well, let's move on. Let's move on. I actually have a way funnier picture. Check this out. Check this out right
lighten
here.
the mood.
This has nothing to do with politics at all. It's just a thing. So a picture on the left is a dude with a snake, and the picture on the right is that's the same guy.
Wow.
Because this is Florida Man. Everybody loves Florida Man. So the headline that accompanied this picture was, Florida Man tries to kiss cottonmouth snake, hospitalized after bite.
Really?
This is just a reminder. If people who are listening right now are like, what the hell are they talking about? The only reason I'm showing this right now is that I just want to remind you that these people vote.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They do.
Yeah.
How old is this guy, by the way?
Who cares?
Is he 16?
I mean, no, he looks like he's probably like 22, 24, something like that. I mean, I'm assuming is as opposed to was. I think he's still alive.
I hope so.
Even though his head's the size of a watermelon.
Yeah, judging by the look of that picture, he didn't do so well.
But, yeah, that's when I think of democracy, I think of this picture. I just, So there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So I think that's good enough for an intro. What do you think?
I think it's crazy, but yeah, okay.
We have to get to the interview segment because we have Mike Maharrey coming back on, and he's our guinea pig since we're trying out new tech, and you never know, you might have some technical difficulties.
I mean, we're working on going live with this
people
bad
don't
boy.
see there's a whole bunch of stuff going on over here.
A whole lot of stuff over here.
And so since there's a chance that all of this disappears into the ether of the internet or whatever,
it could.
Then we invited Mike Maharrey because we figured if we're going to lose an episode, then we'll just lose one with him. I don't mean that. Mike's awesome.
Mike's awesome.
Some of our greatest episodes have Mike in them.
That's right.
I'm just saying we would not have tested all this stuff out with like Lou.
Yeah. That definitely would have made things just tank.
I was about to say we wouldn't test stuff out like this with someone like Tom Woods, but really it was him having all the issues that he was on. Starting with his office and locked door and everything else. That wasn't our fault. That was his fault. I just hope people.
Great, though.
Only reason I say that is because we have the best producer ever.
No, you don't.
No, we do. To be fair, most people don't have a producer at all. They're just in their closet at home or in their garage doing this out of a can with a string. So, out of all the 3 producers of Libertarian Podcasts, I definitely think you're in the top 2. No doubt.
All 3 of them, huh?
Yeah, no doubt.
Thank you.
And so, the reason I mentioned that is that, so if you're ever watching or listening to the show, and you ever maybe you hear some echo or there's a video delay if you're watching on YouTube, that's not our fault.
No.
That's almost always the other person's fault.
Yep.
I don't say that when they're here out of respect.
We blame them for all technical problems.
I would never...
Just like a good producer would.
Yeah, that's totally... So in the hierarchy of whose fault it is, it's the guest's fault, or it's just the internet's fault.
It's just nature.
It's just the internet. The internet did this. It's the feds. The feds did it first. Then it's the internet. Then it's the guest's fault.
Yeah.
Then
it's my fault.
Then it's your Then it's your fault. Then it's my fault. Unless it's you, then it's my fault. Then it's your fault.
It's never your fault.
Well, I mean, if you're sticking up for yourself, you would blame me first before yourself.
But I'm a righteous kind of guy. I don't blame other people for my mistakes.
Righteous. You know what?
Self-righteous.
No, we're done. We're done with the segment on that. We will be right back after this break with Mike Maharrey.
Have you ever been talking politics with a friend and told, if you don't like it here, you should just move to Somalia?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, from the sandy beaches of Mogadishu, Sherry and I bring you Postcards from Somalia, one of the newer products of Little L Productions, where we take on all of the fallacies of the people who say, if you don't like it, you can just get out. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com. Guys, welcome back to the show. We have for a guest today someone who's making his 5th or 6th? 6th? 5th. 56th appearance on the Gold Standard in only like 53 episodes. He is the National Communications Director of the 10th Amendment Center. He is also my co-host on Sports Ball with Mike and Alan, which really that's how I'm going to start announcing you, by the way, for now on, because that's really your main claim to fame. The co-host of Sports Ball with Mike and Alan, Mike Maharrey. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, without me, there would be no Florida sports talk on Sports Ball.
I told you it's going to be 10 seconds of Tampa sports talk with 10ther Mike Maharrey, sponsored by the 10th Amendment Center.
That's going to be awesome.
I don't know how much they're going to pay us to sponsor that. Probably $0 and zero. You know what? They should have to pay us 10. They should have to pay us 10. Yeah, 10 seconds, 10 cents for 10 seconds of 10th Amendment Tampa talk.
I'll get on that with Bolden to get that set up.
He's not going to listen because he still hasn't sent us a commercial for this show.
Well, he'll get around to it. I'm sure it's on his list.
I bet it is. So, Mike, one of the things we wanted to talk about today, you had a little back and forth with a chairman of a party that shall not be named on one of your social media accounts, and it was in regards to normalization versus legalization, and really not to beat around the bush about it. It was specifically talking about sex work, about prostitution.
Yeah, it was a really kind of a dumb conversation, if you ask me. I mean, my position on that is you should not lock somebody in a cage for engaging in consensual activity, and I think that's the libertarian standard, right?
Yeah, sure.
But according to certain chair people of certain political parties, it's not good enough just to support not criminalizing something. We need to normalize it. Mm-hmm. And so what does that mean? I mean, what's the definition of normalize? Well, he gave us the definition of normalize. His definition was we want it to be just like getting a cup of coffee. Now, my daughter worked as a barista. Mm-hmm. I don't really want her to work at a brothel. I don't want that to be normal. I don't understand how that suddenly became controversial or a non-libertarian position.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate the best I can. So if I pretend to be a complete retard, then I'll sound like the chairman of the LP. So the argument, I think, is that normalization leads to legalization. So it's a strategy, I guess. Is that, well, if we really emphasize normalizing it, then that's going to create the groundswell that pushes towards legalizing something. Like, I mean, am I summing up that argument at least legitimately, halfway, decently?
Yeah, I think that, and that's essentially what I think he was getting at. I mean, it was really hard to get at what he was getting at because he was kind of talking out both sides of his mouth. On the one hand, he was saying that, well, it shouldn't be a problem if you don't think it's okay, but on the other hand, it's supposed to be normal. So I never really understood what he was saying, but he did mention that as a strategy that if it's normalized, it's easier to equalize. I would say just flip that statement and it's equally as valid. If you legalize something, it's probably going to become more normalized. Mm-hmm. And I think that's actually what we've seen with marijuana legalization. When California legalized medical marijuana in 1996, it certainly wasn't normalized. And marijuana is much more normalized now than it was then. Not that I'm really comparing marijuana and sex work. I think they're two different things. But I'm willing to take the risk that if we legalize prostitution, it would become more normalized. But I'm not going to take the position that I want it to be like getting a cup of coffee, because I'm never going to accept that as a moral position. I'm never going to think it's good for society for everybody to be running off to the brothel. That's just me.
Well, because we have a lot to talk about today, and I don't want to get too hung up on this, because this is a topic that's been hashed out already. But tell me if this makes sense to you. Is that it seems to me that it's purely strategic on his part, or on the party's part, right? Is that they're trying to signal to potential supporters, donors, voters that we want this normalized, so if that's something that you support, then join us. But the problem with that strategy is that you're now alienating people who are actual libertarians, who actually believe in that people shouldn't be locked in cages for voluntary activity. but that they don't support something like that being socially normalized. So what is that? You're cutting off the nose to spite the face.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I think folks folks who support this normalization position, I think they're saying that because they really want it to be normalized. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's what they want. They don't like the fact that sex work is something that is looked down upon, or that there's ostracification. Is that the right word? Ostracification? That people are ostracized, that there is a moral, that people would look down their noses morally at people involved in sex work. They don't want that to be the case. And I think really in their heart of hearts, they believe to be a good libertarian, you have to accept all kinds of what I would consider debauchery and deviant behavior. And again, I think you can make a clear distinction that I'm not going to interfere with another person's deviant behavior. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean I have to cheer them on and validate them for doing it. And I really think what these folks want is validation. They want me to accept what they do, to cheer what they do, and to honor what they do. It's not good enough just to say, you be you, I'm going to be over here and be me. And we see this in other issues. Like, I believe it's perfectly fine for you to discriminate against me. And I think there's a lot of people would say, well, that's not libertarian. If you're going to allow discrimination, then you're not a libertarian. I don't care. If you don't want me in your presence, then that's your right, and I will honor your right. I don't want to force myself into some place I don't belong anyway. But I think there's a conflation that goes on with the idea of basically live and let live, the non-aggression principle in its purest form, and then all of these other social causes that people want to hang on it.
Yeah. Well, that's what it always comes back around to, right? Like to close this part of the show is that it always comes back around to arguing over who is and isn't a real libertarian. And right. Goodness knows I had my inbox filled with racial slurs towards my girlfriend because I attacked some people for not being real libertarians. But here's the thing is, the difference between me attacking those people for not being real and them is they're trying to prescribe like cultural Marxism to it. Like they're trying to bring in a lot of leftist cultural philosophy and say this is libertarian. But libertarian doesn't have, there's no dog in the fight. To me, libertarian is you believe in non-aggression and you believe in voluntary exchange. Like that's, I mean, we can get deeper in the weeds, but that's pretty much it. But I will say this, if you have anything, if you have a caveat to what I just said, like if you have but on the other hand, you're not a libertarian. Like I'm willing to draw the line in the sand. Like if you don't believe that libertarianism represents non-aggression and voluntary exchange, and that's 99% of it, you're not a libertarian.
Yeah.
And if
and this is, here's what I said. I think I said this in the thread. If it is incumbent upon me to say that I believe that sex work should be just like getting a cup of coffee, if that is what it means to be a libertarian, then fine, I'll just be something else. Yeah. I don't need to wear that label. You know, I'm a person that believes in non-aggression, voluntary association, and private property. Those are the tenets and all this other stuff that you want to hang on. I don't want to hang a right wing or a left wing agenda on it any farther than those things take it. And you know, it's that whole thick and thin thing, and I think it's kind of dumb for, I mean, you know, well, whatever. That's the way they want to. That's the way they want to roll. I guess that's how they're going to roll. But I'm not rolling with them. Well,
you know, like I said, I kind of prescribe their whole agenda to its political strategy, and I think their political strategy is terrible, and it's really a non-starter, because to me libertarianism is not a political thing, it's a philosophical thing. Right. And so since they're trying to be a political party and not a party that promotes, you know, a philosophical position, it's just doomed to fail from the get-go. But while we're on the topic of political strategy, something that you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about today is transitioning to practical politics and pragmatism, and trying to draw the line between people that would say, well, you're just sacrificing principles, that's awful, so I reject all of this, versus looking at it from the perspective of, if I can get something done politically, and it moves us 1% closer to a free society, and you resist that, then you are actively resisting us moving towards a free society.
Yeah, and the reason this has come up is, of course, we're in the middle of what we call nullification season at the 10th Amendment Center. That's our state legislative sessions. And, of course, we're tracking all kinds of bills that do various things to push back against federal overreach. And one of the big issues that we're involved in is marijuana legalization. And every year we get these purists that will say, well, I'm not supporting any kind of legalization. I'm only going to support complete decriminalization. Marijuana should just be out there. It should be available and not taxed. And absolutely, I agree with that position, but it's not a politically tenable position. No legislature is going to pass a bill that just lets people have marijuana and doesn't tax it. For God's sake, they tax everything. Yeah. You know, they tax potatoes. So I don't know why you expect they're going to take something that has been considered a controlled substance for decades, and then all of a sudden it's just not going to be taxed or regulated in any way, shape, or form. But you get these people and they actively oppose things like medical marijuana bills. And to me, this is just a dumb political strategy. I get that there's a lot of libertarians who will just say, you shouldn't be involved in the political process at all. I get that. That's cool. I understand that position and I respect that. But if you're going to be involved in the political system, then you have to have good strategy. If you have sucky strategy, you're going to suck. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of sucky strategy out there. And people have to understand that if you're going to engage in the political system, then you've got to understand the way the political system works. And basically, it works on incrementalism. And if you look at what has happened in terms of an erosion of individual liberty and an erosion of state power and a more centralized government, that's happened little by little over the last 100 and 150 years. You never hear leftists say, well, we're not going to accept this new social program because it doesn't go far enough. No, they do stupid crap like Obamacare because they recognize that it's a step towards where they want to go. And if we're ever going to get back, if we're going to roll back government power, then you've got to be able to take the same thing. So with the marijuana thing, I'll give you a good example. Utah legalized marijuana for medical use just last year. Now, if you had told me 3 years ago that Utah would ever have medical marijuana, I would have been like, no, not going to happen. But Connor Boyack, libertarian activist, a lot of people know Connor from the Tuttle Twin books. He has an organization out in Utah called the Libertas Institute, was very instrumental in getting this medical marijuana bill through the legislative process. Now, along the way, he made some compromises. He worked with the Mormon Church. He worked with opponents. He sacrificed some things that would have been good in the bill in order to get something passed. Now, a lot of people will say, "Oh, Connor's just a sellout. You know, he sold us out. He's one of those sellout, no good status." Here's the question you have to ask yourself. The reality is that now people in Utah have access to medicines that they were probably using anyway. Now they don't have to worry about being locked in a cage. Is that better or worse than the status quo that we had before? It seems like some of these activists would say, well, it's worse because of reasons. And that's, again, stupid strategy. And I almost can guarantee you what will happen is that in the next 4 to 5 years, that medical marijuana program is going to expand in Utah because we've seen it happen over and over again in other states. Just this last week, the Florida governor signed a bill into law that now allows smoking in their medical marijuana program. Initially, smoking wasn't allowed. People wanted smoking. They threw a fit. It goes to the legislature a couple of years later, and boom, now we've got smoking. So people might have opposed it a couple of years ago and say, well, no, we're not going to be for this if it doesn't allow smoking. But they got the foot in the door. And it's like that old, if anybody who's ever learned sales, there's the whole foot in the door technique. It goes back to the old door-to-door salesman days. And the idea was you stick your foot, if they open the door just a little bit, you stick your foot in there. They can't close the door. Then you can push it open further. So at the 10th Amendment Center, we definitely take a foot in the door approach to this kind of strategy. And I put it this way in a podcast that I did recently. You can have a loaf of bread. We'd love to have a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread is great. But if you're really, really hungry, Are you going to say, no, I'm not going to have a slice of bread because, damn it, I want a loaf?
Yeah.
And that's the way people are. People are like, I'm a loaf person. I will not take a slice. Well, that's retarded and bad sucky strategy. And so I think that, again, you have to hold a balance, right? Because I think it is important to hold the principle.
Sure.
You know, and it's interesting. I used this analogy again in this podcast that I did. Thomas Jefferson, I'm wearing my Thomas Jefferson shirt, my status, as some people will say. But when Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, they did the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions in 1798 in opposition to the Alien and Sedition Acts. And they laid out these principles of nullification, this idea that the state had the authority and the power to resist unconstitutional federal acts. When the Kentucky resolutions passed the Kentucky legislature, Jefferson took a copy of it and he sent it to James Madison. And paraphrasing, he said, I think we need to hold firmly to all of the principles that are in these resolutions. But then we need to push things as far as expedience will allow. And he basically said, let's not take things all the way to the limit right off the bat. But let's use good strategy and we'll push things as far as expedient. So look at the situation, look at the political climate, look at the dynamics in the legislature you're working and push as hard as you can while holding firmly to those principles. And Murray Rothbard said a similar thing. Murray said that you should always look, and if it is advancing the ball closer to liberty, then you should support that movement even if it doesn't push it all the way to the limit. Now, if it's something that's going to actually make less liberty, then obviously you're not going to support that. But libertarians need to do a better job. If they're going to be involved in the political process, then we need to have good strategy and not sucky strategy, because sucky strategy sucks.
Well, something that I've said before on the program is, you know, for the people out there who have, like, so first of all, I agree, like, look, I'm not particularly involved in the political process. I know you're shocked to hear that. And so I respect that position. But for the people who are going to be involved in the political process, it seems to me, in the same, kind of tying this into our first segment, for the same people who think that there should be a brothel on every corner next to McDonald's, all that tells me is those people almost certainly don't have daughters.
Yeah.
And almost certainly would not be happy if their daughter came home and said, Dad, I'm going to be a hooker. And in the same way, the same people who say, no, I'm going to stick to principle 100% of the time, which we are, but we're applying that principle too. We're moving that direction. But if you're going to take the position of, I'm going to resist all legislation that's not 100% in line with exactly what I want today, all that tells me is those people are not parents in Utah with a child that has chronic seizures who needs that medication. That's what that tells me. And the fact that you can say that to those people, like, you're just as big of a monster as the state as who opposes it outright. Like, how can you do that? How can, you know, I used to say, like, I used to think that mental exercise of how can you be a politician and be against this plant that could potentially help this kid? How can you be that way? And now, but now I find I have to ask the same question to the libertarian who opposes the legislation because it doesn't go far enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's important to remember that ultimately, once you get the foot in the door, I mean, I could go state by state by state and show you where you get these limited programs, and within 2 years, they're expanding the programs. And that never happens if you don't get the first step. I mean, you don't take the second step without the first step.
Weren't you saying that you had a really good example out of Florida recently?
Yeah, I use that. Remember?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I was.
We can smoke weed. We can smoke weed for medicinal use in Florida now.
Yeah.
Well, in 90 days we'll be able to.
That's what I thought. But what I'm getting at is that, because I remember Florida, because didn't Florida originally, maybe in the last election cycle, that was on the ballot and it got voted down, or was that recreational?
The first time that medical was on the ballot, I know it got voted down, and I think recreational might have gotten voted down in the last election. Okay, that's
what I think I was remembering. But now medical is back and it passed.
Medical passed in the last election in the 2018 cycle, or 2017 maybe. Anyway, so medical passed.
I guess the interesting thing about that is that what you can't do, tying this back into our first segment, is you can't on one hand say, I'm for normalization because since it'll be more normal and more people are doing it, it makes legalization easier. You can't then turn around and say, I'm against this legislation that gets partially what I want. Because isn't that moving to normalize it? Like, if you get the medical marijuana passed and then culturally it becomes more accepted, then it's more likely that recreationally it'll pass in the next term. It just seems so weird to me that so many people are stepping over themselves out of principle, that P word, but they're really hurting their own legislative efforts. But leaving all that aside, there's one thing I want to move on to really quick before we hit the last topic. Is today, and this wasn't necessarily planned, it just kind of works out that way because we film on Wednesdays. Today is the 16th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq. And I actually took exception when I saw that headline on Twitter because I thought, wait, which one? You mean the most recent invasion of Iraq? is what you're talking about.
I think when I posted it on my Godarchy page, I said Iraq War II.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually had this comment before the show with Blake, is that I know I've seen this meme as it relates to Afghanistan, is that Blake's youngest is 2. Mm-hmm. If his youngest had been 2 when we invaded Iraq, he could enlist to go to Iraq today and be in the same military conflict. Does that not just blow your mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll put that into even more personal perspective. My son is 19, so he was 3 when that invasion happened, and now he is eligible to go. And I think people forget that there are still ongoing military action in Iraq. I mean, it's not over. They're still there. It's more on a support role. But and you look back at that, and I come from I was all for it. I remember sitting. I was working for Delta Airlines at the time. I was working at the airport in Louisville, Kentucky, and I remember sitting in a chair. I was working an overnight shift, and I was reading a book that laid out the case for why we should invade Iraq. Saddam has got nuclear weapons, and it was all of the neocon talking points. And you look back 16 years later, and it was all bullshit. Mm-hmm. And look at how many lives were lost, not just American lives, but Iraqi lives, women and children. And you look at how much money was spent, and you look at the situation on the ground in Iraq. It's arguably no better than it was 16 years ago. What the hell do we do this for? Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to me that the same people who talked us into that war are out there today trying to talk us into Syria or talk us into invading Venezuela or whatever military adventurism. Iran, we're going to fix Iran. We're going to get a regime change in Iran. It's like these people are oblivious to the carnage that they leave in their wake. Yeah.
Well, it definitely reminds me, something I know I've heard a lot is that one of the key differences between Vietnam War coverage and war coverage today is that you used to see much more of the gruesome aftermath of what war brings. Whereas today, I always use the analogy of, it's night vision camera. You see the little streaks of light in the air, and maybe you see a blown out building or two. But that's it. You don't really experience the carnage of it. It's not being brought to American homes night and day so that people are very, very cognitively aware of what it's about. And then also, too, of course, we're able to just continue printing money and finance our debt. And so people haven't really felt the pinch, right? Like, it's hard for the average person who, let's face it, they don't care. They don't care. They don't care about Iraqi children. They don't care about lives lost. As long as it doesn't affect their pocketbook and their personal way of life, they don't care. And in some ways, it's a shame that they haven't felt the pinch, because if they had, they would be much more likely to all of a sudden be hardened anti-war, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think there's two big differences. I think you're right on the coverage, and that's certainly intentional. I took a class when I was at USF in journalism school called it was media coverage of war, and it really compared and contrasted. At the time, this was, of course, Iraq was still going on. I was there in 2006, 2007, and there was the whole embedded journalists and whatnot. It was all the military learned its lessons from Vietnam, and they were like, we are never going to allow journalists to have free reign on the battlefield again. We are going to absolutely control all of the information that's coming in and going out, and they've effectively done that. I think there's two other issues. You mentioned the money. I read that if you calculate the amount of money that's been spent on the war on terror, so this would be Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, it basically comes down to $7,000 per year for every person in the United States.
Holy cow.
So imagine if you had to sit down every year and write out that $7,000 check.
Yeah.
You know, I think that would, like you said, people would care. And then I think the third thing is the fact that we don't have a draft anymore. And I'm certainly not advocating for the draft, but that made war much more personal when, you know, you could easily be people like my son. You know, I was talking to a guy that actually went through that experience of having, you know, they had the draft lottery and they literally sat in front of the TV and they had a number, and if your number was called, you knew you were going.
Yeah.
And I talked to this guy about what that was like, and just the knots in your stomach and what's going to happen. And his number got called, you know, and then the next thing you know, he's training to go to a war that he cares nothing about being in. You know, it wasn't that great patriotism. It was like, oh, we're going to send me out to this jungle to die. Yeah. And it's you know, that was the impetus of the anti-war movement. I was reading this. I'm reading a book, and there was a Catholic monk, and he was heavily involved in the anti-war movement. I wish I could remember his name, but he got arrested because he made homemade napalm, and burned like 300 draft cards in an empty parking lot, which I thought was pretty cool. Napalm the draft cards. But you know what they charged him with? He went to prison. They charged him with destroying government property for burning the draft cards. Yeah, but yeah, so there was much more personal in both. You had a personal investment because you or your kid could go, and you know, I think that I don't know that anybody's ever actually seen the direct monetary cost. But if we had to write that $7,000 check every year, I guarantee you people would be a little bit more upset about it.
I feel like there's a theme that's kind of emerged in our conversation today that wasn't necessarily intentional, but there it is that whether it's your daughter going to the brothel, whether it's denying the CBD to the kid with seizures, or whether it's the difference in patriotism levels from the random normie who has nothing to do with the war versus the kid holding the draft card. There's a big difference in how they feel about that number being called. It's all of these things feel like, it seems like the theme is having skin in the game, right? Yeah. Is that people that have skin in the game have a way different perspective over what's patriotic and what should be normalized than the people who don't.
Yeah, I made this argument about taxes just in general. Your perspective changes a lot when you become self-employed, and you actually have to write a check to the IRS every quarter. You know, that's a whole different ball game than, oh, money disappears out of my check every week, and then at the end of the year I get $6,000 back, and I feel like the government's giving me this great favor. I think the smartest thing that the government ever did was create withholding. Again, I imagine that if everybody had to write those checks, you'd have tax revolt. But as it is, most people think the government's giving them money every year. You know, oh, I got $6,000 back. I'm going to Tahiti. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I'll even do you one better. When I owned the printing company here in town, I didn't do quarterly. I just paid one lump sum check a year.
I'm doing that too.
Oh my God! you definitely, and of course, I was a young single guy, no kids, which means no big earned income tax credits and things like that. So it was just work all year, working 60, 70 hours a week just to keep the lights on, because that's how it is a lot of times when you open up a new business. And I didn't get a cool $1 million from my uncle to start my business like some presidents do.
Right.
And so all of a sudden you find yourself come April having, you know, you're alive, you're in business, and it's tough to open a business and start from nothing. And then all of a sudden the IRS says, well, I hope you put back about 40% because we're going to need about a $20,000 check. And you say, from where?
Right.
Where does that money come from? Yeah. I mean, the only taxes I paid during the years was sales tax, and really, it's funny. I remember having a CPA tell us on day one, just somebody who's kind of help advise in getting your business, is they tell you, Alan, this is what you do. If you're having a hard time making ends meet, just don't pay your income taxes until it comes time, and then you put it off, ask for extension. However, you never fail to pay your state sales tax, because Tennessee will show up literally the next day and put a padlock on your door.
Yeah.
So you haven't had a padlock? No one showed up at your house and put a padlock on your front door yet?
No, but I don't sell anything, so.
No, you sell your wisdom, Mike. That's what you do.
Well, yeah, nobody's buying. That's the problem.
Speaking of that, that's what I want to finish with today. So you made a trek from your home in Kentucky up to Ohio recently to talk to, was it the State House?
It was State House Committee on Federalism.
First of all, why does that exist? Like, I mean, of course, once again, in our perfect utopia, our lords that we've elected to rule over us, they would understand the concepts of federalism, and they would know how to do their jobs, and they would have read all the studies before they vote on the bills and all those things. But of course, in the real world, they need a council on federalism. So you went up there to talk to them about nullification, about the 10th Amendment? I
did. And the first thing I have to note is that driving through Ohio is not a very good case study for my roads.
Ooh.
You know, I've been told that I'm paying for these great roads, and by the time I got to Columbus, I felt like I needed to go to the chiropractor, because it was this the whole way. So if you want a case study in why the government maybe should not be in charge of the roads, just drive through Ohio. But yeah, I got to go up there. Representative John Becker, who's a state rep from the Cincinnati area, invited me. He's the chair of the committee, and invited me to come up. And it was supposed to be a debate. The minority, senior minority person on the committee was supposed to bring somebody in, and I guess they couldn't find anybody who wanted to debate the 10th Amendment, or they were all afraid of my sterling reputation. But so basically, it was just me giving a 25-minute presentation on nullification, anti-commandeering doctrine, and why the 10th Amendment even exists and why it's important. And I think the most interesting part of it actually was the question and answer. We spent, I gave a 25-minute presentation, and then I spent 35 minutes answering questions. And you know, I got the typical, well, what about the civil rights movement? And so I got to talk a little bit about how I believe that we would have had the civil rights movement with or without the help of the federal government. And the fact of the matter is that the government itself actually was necessary to create Jim Crow laws. You know, it wasn't federal government, it was state government. So I got to explain that. And then I had another guy who was pretending to be some kind of expert on the Constitution. And he was one of those guys that you could tell remembered just enough from his history courses in college to be dangerous. But then when he called James Wilson an anti-federalist, I'm like, this guy didn't know nearly as much as he thinks. But he tried to trap me, so that was fun. And I saw that coming from a mile away. So, but yeah, it was really good. It was a good experience. There's actually a recording. The whole thing, I recorded the audio. It's up on my website, michaelmaharrey.com. If anybody wants to listen to it, I think it's a really good overview of the 10th Amendment, nullification, the anti-commandeering doctrine, which is really what I kept swinging the conversation back towards. You know, we can talk philosophy all day, but the bottom line is you guys have the power and the responsibility to say no to federal actions you don't like, and you have every right to do it, and even the Supreme Court agrees. And I kept hammering that home. And a couple of the legislators actually came up to me afterwards and thanked me, and one in particular, you know, you always expect the black representatives, who are almost always Democrats, to be very anti-nullification, because there's that whole stereotype of that, you know, all it was for was for maintaining segregation and slavery. And she actually came up to me and talked to me for about 10 minutes afterwards, because she's really concerned about the education mandates that are being pressed down from the federal government, and she feels like it's damaging local control over schools. We talked about that a little bit, and she said something I thought was kind of cool. She said, I just really appreciate what you're doing. She said, I feel like the federal government has put us in a vice, is what she said, or is putting the squeeze on us. I don't know if she used the word vice, but it's putting the squeeze on us. And she said, she paused, and she kind of looks up and she goes, but you know what? My people don't really trust the state government either. And then she paused again and she goes, I don't blame them. So I thought that was kind of cool. I really enjoyed talking to her. So,
well, you know, I just have to say, I'm glad you do have a talk like that. But her comments are particularly interesting because if I was going to be the well, actually guy, I would say, well, did the federal government put Ohio in a vice, or did Ohio jump in it?
Yeah. Well, and that's you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the implication of that is absolutely correct. Ohio put itself in the vice because. And it was interesting. The Democrat on the committee, the ranking Democrat, who asked me a couple of questions, all of his questions were, "What about?" Well, what about the civil rights movement? And then what about the EPA? You know, he's convinced that if it weren't for the EPA, Michigan would be dumping poison into Ohio. You know, and which I don't necessarily accept that premise to begin with. But you know, I said we could talk about these issues all day, and I said I'm sure that you can find things that you think that the federal government has done well. And I said, and I'm sure that the conservatives on this committee can find things that they think the federal government has done well. But I said you have to remember that every bit of power that you give them to fix civil rights and to fix the water also gives them the power to lock up immigrants in cages and lock up marijuana users in cages and you know, engage in unconstitutional wars across the world. So you have to make a decision. Do you want to get your political agenda through, or do you want to actually limit the power so that it's not used against you? And he never really answered that question. Because really, I think the answer in his head was, well, I want my political agenda to get through. But
yeah, you know, well, of course. Well,
because all of these people are sociopaths. So
yes,
you know, there's that.
Well, they're politicians. So, I mean, imagine my surprise you got pushback in a room full of politicians.
Right.
But one thing I'll leave you with before we close today is that I've never understood the line of arguing of, well, if we don't have government for X, Y, and Z, then what about, what about, what about? Because to me, you're glossing over the opposite question, which is, well, why do we have all of X, Y, and Z bad things despite all of the government? But again, as you kind of already pointed out, that conveniently question gets left unanswered, and you're always on the defensive, right? Like that's their MO. That's how they operate. Is you say my principles are X, and then you spend the entire rest of the time on the defense, having to defend that position. Whereas they're never have to be put in the position of, okay, you sit on that panel for 60 minutes, and I'm going to sit here and berate you with questions of everything wrong with the world despite all of your government interaction.
Right. Yeah. You know, just take education.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had the outcomes in education and it was all a private education system, you would hear no end to, this is what you get when you privatize everything. But government creates these outcomes, and it's, you know, you never hear, well, why? Maybe we ought to think about the government not running this. It's always, oh, well, what we need is more government because, you know, they've done such a bang-up job so far. And you're absolutely right. It's that turn the tables, and that's what I really tried to do with that particular rep, is turn the tables on him and say, look, you know, you're talking about all of these great things that the federal government has done for you, but here are things that you hate that the federal government is also doing because you've given them that power.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it may not have hit him, but I think that some of the people on that panel might have at least paused for a moment. And you know, if nothing else, it's on audio, so people can listen to it.
Let me end today with a really vague rhetorical question, because why would I end with something short and sweet? We're
not going to talk about a sandwich, is whether a hot dog is a sandwich.
We've already done that, haven't we?
Probably 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've got a new one for you. Hold on. Quit trying to hijack my damn show, Mike. We've got one more real question before we get to what's plaguing our thinkers. Gotcha. And that is, would you say that one of the major issues is because our theme today has been having skin in the game, although that wasn't our intent. That's kind of how it evolved. Would you say that on a state level, one of the major issues with a lot of the state legislators is they've what's the word I'm looking for? Not acquiesce. They've delegated so much authority that should have been left to the state of, for instance, Ohio. They've delegated so much of it to the federal level that now, as legislators, they kind of don't have skin in the game. It's like, well, the feds decide this. They're going to pay for that. We're just along for the ride. So all of this is just flowery talk because that's not my problem.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely a lot of truth in that. It's just like Congress. Congress has abrogated a lot of its responsibility to the executive branch, and now they can just sit there and say, well, the president, blah, blah, blah. And really, it was their responsibility in the first place. I think you see a lot of that with the state governments as well. I just want to tell for people at home that are listening to the podcast version and not watching on video, Mike just flailed around in his seat like the chairman of the LP for a moment. That's what he did right there. So, wow. So, Mike, we're going to get you out of here on this one. Is cereal a soup? Is cereal a soup? Now, let's define it. It's in a bowl of milk. Cereal in a bowl of milk. Is that a soup? Yes. Ooh. We're getting somewhere. Man. Yep, chunky things in liquid, that's a soup, right? I mean, we talk about chemicals, a soup of, we have a chemical soup. So yeah, if it's chunky things in liquid, then it's a soup. Now if there's no chunky things in it, then it just becomes a broth. Yes, because milk is the broth in a cereal soup. Right. Correct. I agree completely. Now just remind me, you did say that a hot dog is a sandwich, right? Oh, absolutely. Okay, see, this is why Mike gets to come on the show more than anybody else, because he has the right answers to the questions that are plaguing our greatest thinkers. That's right. It's great minds. Yeah. That's the point. I am wise. You don't get these gray hairs doing nothing. I just want to tell you really quick, Mike, the first person I ever asked the cereal soup question was James Bovard, and he viciously rebuked us for even asking. He may never come back on the show. It was not pleasant. Wow. He was not buying it for a second. Huh. Yeah. So that's why G's not here and you are. That's exactly. Well, that's a shame because I really like Bovard. I like Bovard solid too. On a lot of stuff. He was at least willing to leave the door open to discuss hot dogs, but he was not having soup, my friend. Well, and that just goes to show that, if you don't have these higher ideals nailed down, yeah. Where are you really? He might have great ideas about the TSA and limiting government and those kind of things, but I mean, the bigger things, I don't know. Yeah. I'm disappointed. The bigger things. The bigger things. Mike, thank you so much for making another appearance on the show. We are happy to have you as always. Quick, before you go, tell everybody all your favorite links for yourself and for the 10th Amendment Center. 10thamendmentcenter.com, all spelled out. Go there first. Okay. Become a member. Yes. You can do it for as little as $2 a month. Alan Mosley is a member of the 10th Amendment Center. He has his 10th card. I do. Your generous donations will help us continue to do good political strategy where we're actually pushing back against government power and overreach. So go there first. Then you can visit my website, michaelmaharrey.com, where you'll find my podcast, Thoughts from Maharrey Head, as well as other articles and things like the audio from my talk in Columbus. I also recently did a 1-hour presentation on the Electoral College, which I just posted yesterday. And that's a hot topic in the news right now, since we have a bunch of lefties that want to go to the national vote because they think it's going to help them. So you can go there, michaelmaharrey.com. I'm on Twitter, mmaharrey10th. That's 10th. I'm on the Facebook. You can just search for me there. And if you are a Christian, or even if you're not a Christian and you just want to think about Christian theology and political philosophy, you can visit godarchy.org. And I have a podcast over there as well, where we try to pry away this whole gross marriage between the church and the state. So I think that's all of my things. Oh, sportsballpodcast.com, the most important one. Because really, who wants to talk about politics all the time? You really want your NCAA preview, which you're not going to find over at sportsballpodcast.com yet. But it's going to be there. Yeah, but it does exist. I can vouch for that. I know it. The podcast is there. Yeah. In fact, if you go to iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, you can subscribe to the podcast, and you won't depend on Mike Maharrey to post it on sportsballpodcast.com.
Well, the last thing we want to do is depend on Mike Maharrey. So, Mike,
I do not want to do that.
Thank you so much for being on the show again. Guys, we will be right back after this break.
My name is Mike Maharrey, and I'm the host of the Godarchy podcast. And this show came about because, quite frankly, I got tired of the warmongering in the Christian community. And the show has now evolved into more of an exploration of the intersection between Christianity and libertarian political philosophy. So we talk about things like non-aggression, theology, economics, and how all of those things work together.
Hey, did you see the playoff games last weekend?
Oh, you're into the sports ball game.
Sports Ball with Mike Maharrey and Alan Mosley. SportsBallPodcast.com.
Sports ball is not a libertarian sports show. It's a sports show done by a couple of libertarians.
For when you need your bread and circuses.
Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com. Guys, welcome back to the show. Can you imagine yourself speaking in front of like the Tennessee State Assembly or something to talk to them about all the reasons why they're wrong?
No.
No. Because I know that's not technically what Mike did in Ohio. He wasn't going there to be antagonistic. He was going there to just be informative.
Yeah.
But I feel like if it were me, like my whole speech would be, if it takes me 5 minutes to make a point and I get to talk for 25 minutes, then it'd be like, here's the top 5 reasons why you're all wrong. Number 1. And then I would just,
Oh, you could get through it, but you'd have to go through a pack of Depends just to get it happen. The extra absorbent kind. Yeah, that's what it would take. A little confidence,
We should have them sponsor the show.
Yeah.
I think. Depends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially if you're standing up in front of the Tennessee Assembly telling them what they should do.
You know what I saw? I don't remember where I said this. I saw some study recently. Because they're getting in all this genetic engineering stuff, and I saw the study where they were saying they're trying to figure out how to detect what babies are going to be autistic, and so you can just abort those babies or whatever. And I saw the funniest freaking comment underneath that. It was, "Oh man, we won't have any more libertarians." And of course, me being me, I got on the show account and I put on there, "Ain't that the damn truth?" So, what are we going to do when there's no more libertarians? Because autism has been cured.
I'm not autistic. Might be artistic, but I don't know.
I mean, I don't know.
I can draw a really bang-up stick figure.
I can't draw. I can't draw at all. I play music. I'm not visually artistic in any way.
I play music too, but I'm still not good of an artist.
No, yeah. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Man, I love the little mic thing because now
you can lean back and be all guys, kind of mobster,
Thank you. Mobstery?
Yeah, it's
I should try to do like a Vito Corleone thing.
That's right.
Oh. So guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the That sounds like Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
that's what that sounds
like Bob Dylan.
I'm trying to do Vito
He's still
Corleone.
the musician thing and you coming out. What are you going to do?
Okay. I don't like Dylan.
I never said you did. I'm just saying,
No, I'm just making a statement because that's the most controversial thing that'll have been said in this episode. I'm just telling you, I think Bob Dylan sucks. So there you go. I said it.
You're entitled to your opinion.
Ain't that the damn truth?
Yeah, and that's okay because that's what we're all about.
I'm just saying. So my Corleone sounds a lot like Bob Dylan. I'm gonna have to work on that. I don't really do voices a lot. There's a few voices I do really well, and it's totally unintentional.
Well, you should know, man.
I think
it'd be a lot more exciting if you did.
I do a really good Ben Shapiro, which is weird because I hate Ben Shapiro, but I do a really good Shapiro voice.
Sometimes you can't really choose who you're good at mocking.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, anyway. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Gold Standard. You can catch us on social media at facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. Twitter is @Alan M. Mosley. You don't have to do any of that. You can go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com.
That's right.
You can donate to us via PayPal on our website, as well as support us on Patreon,
Please do.
which is Patreon. Please do. Please do. Which is patreon.com/TGS Alan Mosley. We thank you so much, and we will see you next week.